And we are back. It's summertime. We're all across the country. We have come together to unite and join forces to speak about aging. Mama Michelle is with me in Holiday, Utah, as she has made her rounds and she's off to Connecticut next. Um, but our topic today that we're going to dive into is aging, a variety of topics that we can go and that we'll explore. Um, what interests me about this topic is the end of aging, right? Death,
Death?
as it's known. Uh, and I mean, it doesn't interest me, but that's part of why I think about it, right? Because I think about the finality, the depending on your point of view, the finality of death, and how to get the most out of
It's the
life.
end of something.
Yeah, for sure, right? And so, and kind of what's been on my mind, I think probably for a good portion of my life, but maybe more so just in the last couple of years, is the milestones that I hit. Where I'm like, oh, like I turned 40. Like I can remember when mom turned 40. I was 20 on a mission, and you're like 40, and that's like so far away. Like that's so old. And then you're like 40, and like, no, it's not. I don't feel old. I feel the number is old, but I don't feel old. So, but I want to talk about that. Talk about everybody's perspective, the discomforts that we have associated with aging, um, the if we have any issues with it, or if we're all just at peace with aging gracefully and beautifully. So, with that said,
We
uh,
should we should we should talk about our perspectives, but I do think it's good to maybe find the areas of that topic too that we're uncomfortable with too, I think that is fun to talk about.
yeah, well, does anything come to mind for you? Like, what are you uncomfortable with? Because you're not uncomfortable with much. So, what
I
are
thought
you?
we were gonna start with the oldest. Well, I guess I think that'd be mom, since she's the oldest here. But as far as responding, but that was just me making a slight joke. Yeah.
I mean, uh, I think it'd be interesting to talk about death. I mean, maybe we can come back around to it at the end too, but I maybe that's like a good specific way to start is how we think about death. Like I I I guess aging, um I've been scared of it at times, but mostly not so far. And
Yeah.
death, though, like you said, Josh, depending on your beliefs, you can perceive it however you want to, but it is it is like the end of ourselves in this specific form. And so there is a finality to it that and really just like an unknown that's scary. And I think that I like to believe that I'm not scared of death, that I like live my life in a way that um that I'm not like worried about that. But I guess the actual process of dying does scare me. When I think of like there, oh, like going through a doorway where you don't know what's on the other side is scary.
Mhm.
Um, and I think, yeah, like I'm not scared of getting old. I think to me, I've always, ever since high school and I wore old man sweaters, I always thought, man, it's so cool to be old and you just gotta like do whatever you want, like yell at kids on your lawn and stuff. And um, but
Are there elements that you are scared of, or scared may not even be the right word, but are there elements of it that you're like having some kind of foresight of? Oh, this is going to be challenging.
with death,
No, just with aging.
oh. Um, no. I mean, probably. I think let's like keep discussing it, and I'm sure we can find areas. I mean, for the most part, I guess I'll say this. That makes me think of it's really nice. It's really nice getting older and wiser, right? It's nice having more wisdom and more experiences to draw off of. And I think it just makes life a little easier, right? You have you're more comfortable with whatever life's throwing at you because you have experienced different things. The hard part of aging is, I guess, maybe time going by and wishing that you were young, or wishing, that saying of like, I wish I knew now what I knew then. Like, could you have maturity, but maturity at a younger age or something? I think, I think it's hard to, yeah, I mean, it's so easy to be nostalgic about past times, like to look at to to think that everything was better in a previous time, you know? Mm.
Yeah, right. I mean, just that, like mom always says, right, of just how, I'll use the word flawed our memory is, you know, just from her experience from editing these videos. Like, is that what they meant? What did they mean? And then she'll watch it again days later. Oh, like that's totally different than how I understood it. Even as I thought I understood it right after I edited it. So like to put that in like your whole lifespan of just like really what I think that is just like it just teaches mom can probably attest to this too is I think it just teaches you grace for yourself, right? And like man, like we misremember everything. Like we don't remember. Like I mean, it kind of. I feel like I'm going like way meta here of just like that means we don't remember anything
Correctly.
correctly, and so like what is the past even? um,
It reminds me of Jill, who does spirit readings, who told me last year that after her ex-husband died, he came back and spoke with her. And that was the number one thing that she shared with me is that he said there are so many misunderstandings that people have, right? And those misunderstandings just cloud their progress in this life. And that's really our goal here is to progress. But because of all these misunderstandings, so there is a lot of, just that kind of clearing up, you know, um, after death, according to what she shared. But I do feel like for me, the older I get, I feel that, like Crystal has said, while I've been here, it's not fair that patience just comes, as you get older. And, I've kind of thought about that comment often because I feel like I've been rather impatient in my life because I have wanted to get things done and progress and move along. And so I think that, again, as we go through life individually, we have the things. I mean, I feel this for myself, and even as I watch other people that are specifically designed for us, to learn and the best we can, even with all of our misunderstandings. But hopefully to, like Josh mentioned, the word have more grace for ourselves, but also for other people. As I've been going around visiting, family and friends the last few months, that's one thing I definitely see. And as I visit people, in their homes and I spend time with them, that everybody has their particular things that they want a certain way or done just like this in their home, and they're different, but everybody feels right about those things. They go, this is how it should be done, and it could almost be a comedy that, people, it's just so different with every family. There are some things that are similar, but how I think, again, it goes back to what makes us feel safe, how we decide at a young age, these things should be done this way. And there's just all of these decisions that we make from such a young age. And as I observe people, I just start going, wow, how can we unravel that and kind of reset to be more forgiving, more accepting, um, not just thinking, things have to be a certain way. Um, I think those are real challenges that each one of us think because, or, are faced with because we think that what we think is how it is.
Yeah.
I wanna say I think I've actually really loved um I mean this year in particular, the 44th year has definitely been, I feel like what maybe some call not growing pains, because that's when you're younger, right? Is it like aging pains? I feel like there's a term for it, but like just my joints and my eyesight's always been like perfect. But I just like I feel like a couple months ago I just started like pulling books back. I was like, "What?" I'm like an old person now. Um like I have to do this. But it's strange to like be experiencing some of those changes, but definitely that element of grace and patience and just like this space of, I want to just say like allowance, forgiveness, acceptance of just like we're all doing the best we can. Some people maybe look like they're doing it better than others. Some people are certainly like applying certain principles, so they're mastering different things in life better than others if you want to compare, but like ultimately, whether you're homeless on the street or you're a doctor up at the U or you're a mom in the suburbs, like I
Or a
think we're
doctor in the street
well-being.
or a homeless guy in the suburbs.
Exactly. I think there is just, I don't know, it's like life is meant to be lived. And I think instead of avoiding conflict or contrast, and I know I'm gonna, speaking of contrast, I'm gonna have bright light here in a minute, but like, yeah, it's like I don't find myself avoiding it as much. Like I understand that like contrast and problems are part of life. And oh, I don't know why that's like such a relief. Like to not feel like I have to like do something to not have problems because like I've accepted that there's going to be problems. And so now it's like now I feel like I can just enjoy life. Like, yeah, there's going to be shit to clean up. Like, thanks Josh for helping and clog the toilet today. But like, um, I love your laughing in the background, Liz. It's great. Um, anyway, yeah, I guess that's how I feel on aging in general is just like,
But did you ever did kind of what you have said in the 44th year,
mhm.
um, you have this allowance, this acceptance, and that you don't avoid it. But did you avoid it for a time? And what like what were you doing to avoid it if you were?
I don't feel like I've ever avoided aging so far. Like I've always um enjoyed and appreciated like speaking with elderly people, whether I got that from mom or from myself or a combination. Like I've enjoyed learning from generations. And so even myself, like I remember, with my best friend Amy, growing up together since high school, like every year she'd be sort of kind of like, "Oh, we're getting older." I'm like, "But it's great." Like I was excited, but it was funny to have that like contrast of her experience with that, even with wrinkles and the like, the whole like societal social media thing of like filters, right, to make us look forever young. I really somehow I feel like in general, I feel like I've just not, that hasn't pulled me. Even though sometimes it's fun to do the filters, I've appreciated more like the raw, real, like whether it's myself sharing or like someone else I'm watching, like I just want to see the real thing. Like I don't need to see like again like of flaws because we all have flaws. And but yeah, I think I've what I'd say with age the most for me is a lot of that allowance and acceptance. I finally turned inward more, where I feel like I have more easily done that with other people. But finally, I've like feel like I finally like landed like, oh yeah, I can give that grace to myself too, instead of just like other people. Um,
Instead of trying to get rid of all your problems and worry,
mhm.
I have these problems. You've now moved to be like, oh yeah, I have problems and I don't have to solve them right now, this instant, and I don't have to let it take away from the rest of my life.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think just the like acceptance and the patience piece. I had someone heard someone define patience the other day in a way I never thought of before. And he was referencing how patience is also a sign of respect. Like when we have respect for someone or something, we are like patient with the like response or the like action, the amount of time it takes for that person to respond to us or not. And so it's really interesting to consider that. I feel like is one of the things that a lot of people talk about that they usually acquire as they age is patience. And so I'm also curious if, that sparks anything else in anyone as far as that respect piece, because going like bigger picture, I think if we really are all holding respect for someone, even just respecting someone as a human, maybe we don't respect their actions, we don't, there's a lot, but like when we can establish that, then we can begin to actually probably solve bigger problems. But that's probably another conversation. But I am curious about just that aspect of patience and even going um from, I guess like just how we age. I also got this book. I guess maybe, oh, I don't know if we're gonna see it with all the weird. Anyway, it says old age is always 15. See, I'm pulling it back already. Old age is always 15 years older than I am. And it's just all these random quotes by like famous people, writers, authors, actors. This one's from Harrison Ford. So I thought, this would be appropriate for our family. He says, I just don't think of age and time in respect of years. I just have too much experience of people in their 70s who are vigorous and useful, and people who are 35 that are in lousy physical shape and can't think straight. I don't think age has that much to do with it. I also thought that was interesting because I found that to be true too, as far as vigor and like vitality and, contribution.
Yeah, that is a really good idea of, I think having good examples of aging is really important.
Mm.
Have people that that, can show that they're still embracing life and actively engaged in pursuing things that are meaningful to them and not just, sitting around waiting to die or, never wanting to house and just sitting on the couch all the time. And I do feel like, health problems can be a deterrent to that for sure. And so I'm, and giving grace to those people who have health problems, whether it's mental health or physical health, where they're in so much pain or have those extreme situations where they can't do much. Um, but I do love the idea too of also looking at youth as you've probably heard that quote that says, is youth wasted on the young? Right? and even energy. Like, I look at energy that these young people, these little children have, and but just as you get older, I think for me, that's one reason I'm more patient too, because life slows down. I don't have young children. The pace of life is different. And also, I feel that it is important to, still. I mean, I feel like I've been contemplative my whole life and wanting to be me. But what I'm focused on now as I get older is different because I recognize that my clock is winding down. And that brings up emotion, but not that we ever know when our clock is about to go off, but I really do feel like, wow, I'm 62 and my parents both died in their 80s before they were 85. And so when Josh just mentioned that about 20 years, right? I mean, what if I have just 20 years? What if I'm that same average of my parents' lives? That's kind of common to, that I've just gone to, do my physical with my doctor, and that is a common thing. They ask you, how long did your parents live? I mean, my father outlived his um, parents in age, and so did my mother. So if that continues to go that way for
Right,
me,
sure.
then I would outlive, the ages that they were. But that is a big consideration now where I never really thought about that when I was younger because I just thought, oh, I've got so
You've
much
got
time.
more, you have more time than you've lived, right? Like for me,
Yeah.
that's just like the strange feeling of like, oh man, like I've lived more time than I have left,
Yes.
right? Like, and I don't know that, right? I'm just, right. I'm saying, hey, if I live to be 82, then like I'm right there in the middle. But like there is this kind of thought as where this scale tips, and you're like, I have now lived more than I will
Mm-hmm.
live.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, yeah, that's an,
That's maybe the interesting thing about it is that I've thought that too, and it's comforting at the age that I am now to think like, okay, I'm about halfway done. Um, but this first half has seemed like it's gone on forever. It's like,
is it though? You really feel like it's gone on forever? I feel like it's just,
I mean, I know what you mean, like the last 20 years has gone by quickly, but that's only when I think of when I speak of it in those terms, when I think of like, yeah, going on a mission or like getting married or like even when Crusoe was born, it's like, oh, that's gone by fast. But then when I actually look at it, it's like, oh man, that seems like a long time ago. And yeah, when I start thinking of all the things that have happened, it does seem like a long time. And obviously time is moving quicker. I guess mostly it's comforting to know my point was is like halfway seems all right. But I know like when it becomes less than that, when it's like, oh, I'm 50, oh, I'm 60, like that feels much different. And I mean, Mom, you're the only one of us that can talk about that, but I do think that's an interesting thing to talk about the biology of it, the physicality of death. Like maybe none of us really understand it because it's just still far away enough. I mean, is that what like makes you emotional about it? Like that it's going to end? Or I mean, I guess does death seem more real at 62 than it ever has in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not afraid of death. Kind of like what you said earlier, the pain of death is, not knowing how that's going to occur. If I just fell asleep and woke up in another sphere, that would be my choice if I had a choice. But no, I think what touches my heart, honestly, is how fast it goes by and how I feel like it literally slips through my fingers. And am I really soaking up every moment and making the best of it. Because when I think we casually say everyone's doing the best they can, well, I don't know. I think we're unconscious a lot of the time. So I don't think we're consciously doing the
Right.
best that we can. And I think that if we knew that we had only a certain amount of days, we'd live very differently. And so that's what I'm focusing on now. And that's actually been very prominent in my, you know, attention since I turned 60, because I read all those decades of journals and I'm like, I haven't changed that much. And so, I don't want to just keep circling back around and, having opportunities to relearn the same things. I really want to shift and do things differently in certain areas of my life. And so that's what I'm more focused on now. And I feel like that is what I want more time to do, honestly. So I hope and pray that I can do that before my time is up, that I can, make a difference in the ways that I most desire to make a difference in the choices that I have and my relationships. I think relationships are like our biggest mark that we leave on the world.
Yeah, so kind of, I mean, that goes into one of the questions I sent you guys is I think a lot of, as we talk about aging, I think a lot of what we can spend, or maybe, I don't know, just a very predictable thing that is talked about when it comes to aging in time, right, is regret, right? I think it's very easy to think about regret, and even, whether it's unintentionally, right? You're saying, hey, like I read 60 years of journals and I haven't really changed that much, but I still want to change some of these things, you know. And in my logical brain, I'm like,
That's why I don't keep a journal.
but in my but
No, no record.
in my logical brain, I'm like, if it didn't change in 60 years, why does it matter if it changes now?
Mm.
You know? I mean, I'm all for change, but yeah, like I said, like I don't want to necessarily talk about regret because I think it's too predictable. Um,
Liz, what are some of your biggest regrets? Yeah, I know you've got a lot.
Yeah, tons. No, I'm just enjoying hearing because I feel like really when I turned 30 was really the only like the first time I had ever thought about age. Like I think my whole life I really wanted to be older. And so 30 reaching 30 was like the first point where I even like thought about, oh yeah, like I'm not just 20 forever. And so I mean, Mom, hearing you say that, because I remember you talking about, reading those journals. And I mean, of course, you have changed, though, right? Like, I think there are like recurring themes for each of us in our lives and recurring lessons. And I think there's like different layers of healing in those. So I think sometimes when you're writing that, maybe you can't write all of the nuanced parts of like where you're learning and growing. So it maybe seems even more like, but it's like, of course, we like, I think that's why we're all here. That's my belief that we have these like particular lessons or things that we're here to learn. So if we look back, there's going to be these like cycles of life. But I think what I'm taking from you saying that is like the most important thing is to just be as present as possible. Like, I think we live in a society that's like constantly focused on how we can be better and or like reminiscing about the past, which I can certainly do both of those a lot. And I think like the way to get the most out of life and to be vivacious and joyful is to like come back to like our essence, like almost like that child self of like their kids are so present with like what's right in front of them. And I mean, to be fair, they like don't have a lot of other responsibilities and like they can kind of they have more
working for them in that way. But so yeah, I'm kind of interested to hear more about that because I feel like saying like, oh, I haven't changed that much, I would argue that maybe that's not
Yeah. Thank
true.
you, Liz. I mean, all that you just articulated was so beautiful. And yes, I do think there are those nuances and there are those themes and that circle back around, and there are layers within those themes that I probably have progressed if I really were to look at all the nuances. Because we live in a world that's constantly changing, right? And so, how can we help but have some change? But I do think, yeah, those big themes is, basically where I see that. Things that I've written about, like Steve and I talked about this a couple weeks ago when I saw him about like, oh man, our goals every year are basically the same. What's up with that? You know? And I wonder how many of you think that. Like, are your goals still fitness, finance, relationships, or, specific things like that? And within those, yes, there's lots of different steps and things. What about you, Ben?
What do I think about aging?
Yeah. Or
Let me,
about this specific thing we're saying, or
let me tell you,
What's your deepest regret?
a tattoo on my beep. Uh, no, but aging, it's interesting. It's like, so for me, a couple things. Parenting has definitely aged me the most. Right. In the sense of like I look at our firstborn, right? He's about to turn 30. And you know how they do those side by sides of like presidents of like before office and after? That's kind of how I feel like. Is like it's like, like looking at old photos, I'm like, wow, I look so young. But like it's like I don't think about aging too much. But I think, yeah, just even noticing just like some like yeah body things like it's not major, but of course I still notice it. But I've always taken it upon myself to be like I want to like better with age. It's like, and we don't,
A fine wine.
yeah, fine wine like in many ways. And so like it's always freaked me out when I see like you guys mentioned earlier like people waiting for death. Like that like on it like makes me so sad. Like when like I'm seeing people just and I don't know if there's any way around that to a certain degree, right? Like, do you just reach a point where it's just like how else do you die and dwindle? Just like you're just like I'm healthy and thriving, and then like a sharp decline, but because that seems inevitable. But yeah, for me, that definitely sounds like the most uncomfortable part. Um, but even like we were talking about this yesterday, me and Belle, of like if you're in your 60s, so you mom, right? And like you're not doing like strength training and like and mobility, then your 80s you will be immobile, right? So for me, like I want to be sharp physically and mentally. So like that's a big thing for me because just going back to presence. Um, so for me it's
If you're
just
60, you're only going to be walking with your hands, not your feet.
or or you'd be hovering by then. But
I mean, because you're so strong, you have so much
oh, you're
upper
talking to me.
strength.
I mean, I don't think that's necessarily true, honestly. I mean, Grandma Brown was not, I mean, I do know people that were not strength training ever, you know. I think there are some genetics, like Grandma Harris also. I think there's a big part of it is genetics, but I do
Yeah.
agree. Like I look at Vicky and Kent. I don't know if they would watch this, but I mean, they have so many health problems right now. They have been strength training. They've been very diligent about that. So, I mean, there's no guarantees, but I do
Well, it's
think,
more than that too. It's
yes,
obviously it's complex, but that's just an example.
yes, but I do think it goes back to having, like, if we focus too much in one area, right? Like the balance of things, I think is kind of feels to me like something I've always wanted. But if I get close to having it, it's like, it's just balance for a few seconds and then it's all blown after, and then I'm looking for that balance again in whatever way that I think I'm missing it. So, yeah, I think part of that for me now is just again to do the best I can and to have grace for myself and to have, because in a way, as I see people kind of focus so much on one thing, whether it's getting, plastic surgery or getting Botox or doing all the things to resist aging. And then people who are like not doing any exercise or any strength training or anything on those, and same with relationships, right? People that are maybe more focused on themselves and not really trying to better the world around them or the community around them. I mean, there's all these different ways, but for me, I truly believe that that the happiness that I and this point in my life is really more about focus on others than focus on myself. And I just feel that like in every fiber of my being. Of course, I need to take care of myself. But I think the world we're in focuses so much on some of these other things that it is important to take care of ourselves. But I think the service we give, I don't know. What do you think about that, Ben? Because I know
I
you're
think that's a phase. So for me, when I've talked to older people, it's like a phase of life, right? So it's kind of like you accumulate and then you give. So, and obviously it depends on resources available, but that's what it seems like when people enter their 60s. That's kind of like what happens, like at least from my observation. At least it becomes more natural that you just want to give back and serve more.
Mhm.
Um, and also I want to share this too of like, Mom, when you shared that when you turned 16, went through your journals and realized like I haven't changed much. I appreciate you sharing that because that was like for me of like, oh yeah, like getting more like yeah, serious in like a not like a gripping way, but just like a yeah, like do I want to be in that same place? And the answer is no.
Yeah.
So it's like, and I looked at my journals recently and I saw some of those same things. I've been writing about the same stuff for a few years. I'm like, buddy boy, you better let's go, man. Like, like
But
it's time. So it's like for me, I'm glad I can recognize it now, but like,
but
yeah,
to challenge your idea, like I would say that you're going to get to 60 and you're probably going to feel the same.
yeah,
Like because
maybe.
so much of who you are is just your personality and like how you live like that. And that's why I kind of to go to mom because I'm like I'm not saying it to be contradictory. I'm not saying it to challenge. I'm saying like is that part of kind of just being okay with it and being hey like instead of being like man I didn't change or I just seem why do I keep repeating these things like maybe that's just okay.
Yeah, so for me, it's like a tangible thing that I want to achieve, right? So for me, that's like what I want to do, right? So it's like that's it's not like and I've changed with this in the sense of like it's not some huge pressure, but it's like from a joyous place of like to experience it, not just like it in itself just to check a box, but like the adventure and the journey and for me to be like who I'm becoming in that process. That's what that really means to me of like doing this or achieving this is becoming someone. And so for me, that's like my intention behind it. Um, so like I know like I'm have my essence, like it's not really that. It's just more of like the tangible things that I want to experience in this one physical iteration.
And that becoming, that it could be a whole other conversation. Yeah.
Well that I mean that's a lot of like what Seven Habits is, right? Seven Habits when he talks about goals and stuff like that is to focus on that kind of becoming, right? Like all of our goals should be they shouldn't
Processes.
to be process, right? They shouldn't be outcome based. A goal, and I think Jordan Peterson maybe has said this too, right? Like it should be a process goal, should be a becoming goal, because if it's that, then you actually never achieve it, and so you never
Mm.
stop, right? Because I think the example that he used, I don't know if it was in his book or what, but it was like be a good dad, right? Like I want to be a good dad, and that's my goal. And so it's like I'm not like I'm a good dad and I'm done, right? I'm constantly a good dad, and like that way of being, becoming is the goal. And so like, yeah,
Well, and
I
also achieving most of the time is not very satisfactory.
sure.
Like once you get to something, it's like, oh, this is I feel the same, you know.
Hmm.
I wanted to ask you guys a question. I mean, um, on a perspective on me, because I've hearing you talk about change and personality, like I don't necessarily recognize. I actually do think that my personality has changed over time. Maybe not all aspects, but like mostly when I think about like my relationship with Tessa over the years, I think I've I've changed a lot in my relationship. So that's like the easiest thing for me to track. But what I wanted to ask was, in the last 2 years, I feel like I've changed more than I ever have, besides, when I was still growing up, like after the age in the past 20 years, basically, I feel like I have mostly gone with the flow and just things have kind of happened where like in the last 2 years, moving to Connecticut, I think spurred change, just like it being in a new place. I mean, um, and a lot of that's like physically, but even just like my habits have changed a lot. My like, it's weird. In some ways, I'm more driven. In some ways, I'm less driven. And like, even just, um, I mean, the most specific one is physically is like just like I care so much more about like how I feel and I enjoy like being physically active more than I ever have before. And to me, that's startling because like 5 years ago, I, and honestly, for the last 20 years, I've been kind of philosophically opposed to like exercise. I just thought it was like futile and dumb, basically.
Do you share the same opinion as our president, where your heart has a limited number of beats regardless of what you do?
I didn't know that. Dang it. Guess so.
Fact checkers. We have our fact checkers on that. They'll get back to us if that
And
was.
fathom.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like I mean, that's one very specific thing, but I feel like that's wrapped up in other things. And I feel like that's one specific way that I feel a lot different. And like, I guess what I wanted to ask was, do I seem different to any of you?
I love this question.
Well, that's all we have time for today, everybody. Thanks for joining
Stay
us on
tuned.
the conversation for the second part of aging.
But yeah, I would say like you're you're different in the sense of like, I mean you named it, right? Of like, um, and it's interesting for you to even express that, right? Of like futile, right? Like I'm curious, like, do you feel like that was your way of just like deflecting, like that you didn't want to do it?
Um, no, because I mean, part of it's just necessity too, right? I like at a
Mhm.
certain, from 20 to 30, I didn't need to work out
Gotcha.
to like feel good physically, I guess. And at that point, I mean, I did actively think like, oh, why would I spend my time in a
Mm,
gym when I could be doing something else? And maybe that was just because I didn't need to, and then that carried over into getting more out of shape. But it was that's like the strange thing to me is it's like there was never a desire get into shape. Like that's not what happened. Like I didn't like get sick of how I looked or anything like that.
You want
I felt like I just started working out, and then I really don't know. I mean, I started working out with that trainer, a year and a half ago, and something just clicked, and it was like,
Mm.
well, yeah,
oh,
I feel
I
good
really
doing
enjoy this.
But I think part of it is you found something you love doing
it.
in
Yeah, that's part of it.
pickleball.
But that was after.
And it's social too. Oh, that was after you started working out with the trainer.
Yeah, that was like 3 months after. I mean, I definitely think they're connected, and they've helped like buoy each other. But
So so we do change.
I mean, I mean, that's like not. I guess that's the tricky thing of it is it feels that's the weird thing to me is it feels not necessarily like a personality thing, but also it does mostly because so much of my way of thinking has changed where I never thought before about exercise or what I'm eating, and it makes me more productive in other ways because I'm more productive in general because I have to like organize my day to be able to
Mhm.
accomplish what I want to accomplish.
Yeah.
I feel like these are things that like I feel like the shifts that we see are like subtle shifts because like these are like things you're doing, like we don't see you doing those things, right? So like, and the essence of who you are is still the same to me, like that like jokester, that like just your wit and all of these things that like make you who you are is still there, but I would say there's like a subtle like more groundedness like energetically, but I wouldn't say I'm like, oh yeah, like because we're not seeing those day-to-day things, I wouldn't know why, right? And so it's like I feel
Yeah.
these like subtle energy differences that like maybe some people wouldn't miss, but like as you're asking that and I'm like thinking about like my perception of you, I'm like, oh yeah, there are like these subtle shifts, but I wouldn't know why, or like, and you're the one that can see like how much like those daily things have changed in your own life, you know?
Yeah, I think I kind of second what Liz says. You know, if you were asking me like, hey, do you see a big change in me? I mean, like I hesitate to say it because like I just don't want to hurt your feelings because you're like saying I've changed. Where I'm like I
Yeah.
don't really
No,
see.
please do. I like it when people hurt my feelings.
But you did say mostly with you and Tessa, and we wouldn't
Yeah.
see that, you know?
I mean, I will say, I kind of say what Liz said is, I do feel that you are a little bit softer, um, and mellower, um, in a, in a more loving way, not in like a dandy kind of way, like just in like you just, and as a guy at church, I said something and he just said, hey, like testosterone is a cycle of life for a reason, and like he just says, like as yet, like it decreases and that has an impact on your life, and he's like it's meant to be. And so I think that, biologically, if that's it, I don't know, right? Just as that hormone decreases, you lose that intensity, that hardness. I think there's an element that you lose as you
Mm.
age, and so I mean, without testing your levels, I mean, you never know, but I mean that whether that's
I'll send you some blood.
whether it's hormonal or whether it's just you have had this change because of your experience. I for sure think the experience is impactful, and I do think like as we kind of ponder about it, there's like there is this softness that maybe not be the word that you want me to use, but like I mean it in a tender, caring way. Um, but like it's not this
Huge.
huge like perpendicular like
I'm a viper.
Jared, I think the thing I see is how much you just feel more joyful that you are doing something you love so much. Like I know I kind of tease you about pickleball, but I feel like it's made you
I didn't
more.
know you were teasing me about it.
I say this all the time about pickleball in your life. I think in every call. But I wanted to share also that you talked about being like more productive because you're exercising. But I wanted to point out something else, like it's productive in a different way because you haven't really even been working that much.
Yeah.
So I find like
But it makes it easier for me to work when I'm busy, you know.
because I think in our brains, again, our brain wants to make it, one way or the other. And I was so productive when I had 5 children at home, and I would get up and exercise in the morning, and I got so much done. And I think of all the things I accomplished in a day. And yet, I feel like right now in my life, I mean, the things I want to accomplish are different. Raising my children was definitely important and very valuable and meaningful to me. But so many of the other things I had to accomplish, right, were just things that had to be done, that to me weren't as joyful. And so now I'm at a different place in my life, a different pace, a different place where I'm looking to have kind of what I'm even saying about, pickleball is giving you this joy to do something that brings you that, just being in the moment. It's fun, it's social, it's just something you really enjoy. And I'm finding that in, something else in my life. But different stages where we're at too, I think it's important to acknowledge that it doesn't have to look one way or another. Because I think about, I had these goals to buy this house, and I thought that was going to give me everything, or have, this certain job was going to be the thing. And I just circling back to this comment about the process. I really do feel like, and you said this too, Jared, about, that once we get to the goal we thought was going to make us happy or make us feel different or that we'd change, typically it's like, oh, well, where's the next thing that I want? Because it's kind of a letdown in a way. Like, oh, I thought it was going to be all this, but I think it is actually kind of what Ben said. It's the becoming of it. It's the becoming, the process of it that is, I don't know. Again, is it that joyfulness? Is it that discipline, or that we're building these ways of, how we are able to achieve? And that's what really is the gift in it, is the becoming those things we're building in ourselves. So now, you're at this place in your 40s, Jared, where you don't have to do it, but you have the time to do it. You're enjoying it. You're in a whole new area of the United States, and your family's thriving, your children are thriving. And I just think that's lovely. And it wasn't that you made it that way necessarily. And this is another thing I love about life, is if we can just let go and allow, and we do have to make effort, right? And do things. But that's what I'm seeing in my life right now. Like I'm just looking at the things that are just coming together, on a weekly basis, these miracles that I'm just going, I don't have to control it or make it happen. It is going to come together in the way that it's meant to for me. Just I keep moving forward, just these one step at a time type of motions of becoming.
Well, I think that kind of ties into what Heather said in the very beginning too, of like understanding that contrast is also like a part of that and part of that becoming, right? And like I think we want, like in talking about goals, like we want to go, okay, once we get this, we'll be this. And it's like I feel like the older I get, the more I realize like to enjoy my life fully, I have to be more comfortable with like not knowing and being in this like point of surrender and not really with what's coming to me, like whether it's contrast and like trying to have a higher perspective of like maybe I don't understand why this is happening right now, but like understanding that it is for like my learning or my growth or for some reason. And same with like things that are beneficial or that feel really fun and exciting, but also knowing that like getting one thing or getting to some end point does not lead to like we're not just done.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we're not just done with these things as soon as it happens. And you hear that all the time with like celebrities that say, or like, you know, once they get to a certain point, like it's actually really confronting because like once you achieve all of the things that you wanted to do, it's almost like then what, you know? And then I feel like
Well, and
that's
that's almost like a nice thing if you can force that, right? Because that's like the true frontier of
Hmm.
like personal growth is getting something that you want that's material and realizing that you don't really need it. And then, and I think that happens naturally with age too, right? Is you, I mean, I guess not for everybody, but it's, you realize that the possessions matter less as you get older. But that's like a nice thing, right? If you can be confronted with, oh, I have everything that I want and I still like don't like it's not making me feel a certain way about myself. You know, I can only do that within. Nothing exterior is going to give me that
Yeah.
self-value or self-love or whatever you want to call it.
When I saw the prompts, one thing that popped up for me is like, so I'm not sure if this is a question or if I thought of the question, but like, am I different than I thought I would be? Right. And one way that for me has shown up is like, I was like, and yesterday I was working at a coffee shop and I'm 34 and there was this friendly, energetic 24-year-old. So like a decade apart, which I thought was fascinating. Right. And then we're having this conversation today. He found out that like I'm a coach and then he just started going off on all these things. And he was like super stoked. He's just like a bright-eyed trying to figure life out. Obviously, well, we all are, but like, and it just reminded me of like that time. Like at 24 was the height of music. And I would say like I was the most delusionally confident I've ever been.
Which
And
is a
now,
awesome place to be.
but so it's like I wouldn't have thought I would be like less confident. Like I'm not sure if that's the right way to describe it. I'm not sure how to describe it, right? And that yet, like,
That's just wisdom. I think wisdom. I think that's what it is.
yeah, but it's like, yeah, it's like less risk taking, right? Like, obviously, because it's like in a family, I'm not gonna just like, let's go, it's kind of, it's that type of thing. So I'm not sure how to describe it yet, but that's one way for me when I thought of like, oh, I'm different in that way. So yeah, whether that's wisdom or whatever it is.
There is uh, just listening and observing myself and thinking of time because it is like the only place where we can impact time is the present moment. And so I think, to like, I feel like really sum up what I feel like most of us saying is that like being present is the place to be. Even if we have health problems or we don't have money or whatever the thing is, life doesn't stop happening, and there's plenty to enjoy, plenty to be grateful for if we stop worrying about the past or the future and just like be in this moment. And so I think that's just, I know for myself, my problems maybe have changed a little bit. And obviously, like having, another little one was like a whole other thing, being, you know, a young
She's talking about you, Summer.
mom.
Talking about you.
She's like, what? She's trying to entertain herself. Um, yeah, I think that's been different being a mom in my 40s versus like not that I've stopped being a mom, but like a mom to a young child in my 40s versus my 20s. like that's a whole other experience of like age and time. And in some ways good, in some ways I'm like, yeah, I'm tired. Like I gotta do this whole like education thing again. Like, okay. Like it's definitely gonna be different. And yeah, it really is fascinating to observe life and even ambitions, right? Or what motivate us. Because I think listening to Ben talk about some of the physical things that he wants to experience and create, in some ways, I feel like I'm coming back to some of those things that I feel like, whether I want to call them like dreams or visions, that like perhaps I had even in high school around 18, 19. Like I feel like I'm touching some of those things again. So I feel like in that way of like looking over our journals and perhaps having some of the same goals, I think what I've seen for myself is that my values, for the most part, haven't changed.
For sure.
However, like how I choose to like fulfill them, or like the path that I'm on of like even for like relief, for pleasure, for joy, for all of it, like that might be different. But like there is this like re-emerging spirit like of my dreams that also feels good to be like touching and being like what part of these like can I actually like give life to, like because I'm good with like creating more babies, and that takes a lot of energy and like everything. So I think it's just interesting to think of like as we get more time, right? Talking about retiring when we're 35 or whenever it is, 62, right? Like all of these things, like then what can we do with all of that time? And we can just enjoy life. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like if that's just our goal, be with our family, or we can, create businesses or projects or service. And yeah, I can't say that I see any of that being right or wrong. It's just like what our preferences are.
Well, one thing that made me think of Heather is me, one thing that I love about these calls, this podcast, is this is like, I think, one of the few times, like, this is like the most present that I am, like it's, and it's strange because it feels like that shouldn't necessarily be true, like that, oh, like that I'm more present in my physical surroundings, but even like a peaceful moment of meditation or like like a family moment usually lasts like 5 minutes, or 10 minutes or maybe 15 minutes. But like it's funny that sitting and staring at a screen, of these six beautiful people, like can feel so present, and it's like, oh, we're here for a very specific reason, and we're just going to do that thing. And maybe because the goal is so pure, right? We're not, trying to get 1 million subscribers. There's not some huge goal. It's
Speak for
really just
yourself, Jared.
it's really just the experience of like talking and being together. It's like it's really nice.
For sure.
And I also, yeah, I appreciate that, Jared, that you acknowledge that and how that is, important in our conversation. And also going back to what Heather said too, I think is important to just reiterate how wherever you are in your life, right? Whether you that have the ambition to do something in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, to do that thing and get that thing, or maybe you don't have a chance to do that thing. It kind of sounds like you're saying that, Heather, like you didn't have a chance because you were creating lives, right? 5 lives. And so now, maybe as you are moving through that, even though some are still young, you have, a different focus. And I think that's really
Good
important.
name. That's a good name for a podcast or a band or something. Five Lives.
Yeah.
Our five wives.
But just
No.
when I do think that's part of it, like I said, when I was so busy raising five children and doing all the things, all the tasks, very ambitious and driven to do certain things. And I'm in a different stage right now. And I just think that's important to acknowledge that those things can happen at any age. It doesn't have to mean you're older or younger, or it's too early or too late, or you should be looking at something else at this point because you're old and not attractive anymore, right? I mean, none of that really is true. It's just whatever you want to do and you believe it in your mind and you feel it in your heart. I think is, and I look at all of you. I was telling Josh this earlier that I don't feel like any of you are, and even your partners, right? Like, you don't really wear makeup, you're not into Botox or, you know, artificially making yourself look younger. And that also says something to me that I think is more like you're okay with where you're at and you don't have to be, and if someone does want to do those things, that's okay too, but I do think for me it is because
Probably
I
mostly modeled for us.
yeah, I mean, I did that in my 40s. I got Botox, for a little bit, um and I remember thinking to myself in my 50s, eventually I'm going to have to embrace aging and what it does to my skin and my body. And one of the most shocking things to me was I knew about the wrinkles on the face. You've probably, my girls have heard me say this, but I didn't realize about the wrinkles on your body, like your legs and your skin gets kind of a crepey texture, and as it thins, like I didn't realize that. Well,
I'm saving up for calf implants.
you can't just get a repetitive. I mean, I guess you could get repetitive, plastic surgery, but that would be painful and a lot of time and investment. But to eventually just say, I'm going to have to embrace my body as aging and changing. So I want to just practice doing it, in my 50s. So I do feel like, yes, I'm not saying that what I'm doing is a standard for anyone, but I do want to be an example to my children and grandchildren of, seize the day, whatever age you're in, and
Aging gracefully.
yeah, and live your life and do the things that bring you joy and hopefully, help you feel like you are progressing, you are learning, and you are making a contribution.
Do you think more people would be able to do that if we just talking about life and death? Like, I feel like we're so far removed from death, or we're trying to like disassociate from the idea of death, or even like
I
not
was,
not
sorry.
wanting to age. Oh yeah.
Oh no, I'm just saying. Like, I would even say not. Maybe it is the idea of death, but I would say I think just the idea of aging, of being old and frail, is
But don't
something.
you, but don't you think that uh, for example, I'm watching this show called 6 Feet Under. Have you guys heard of it?
Old one, isn't it?
It's an old HBO show, but they talk about um I mean, it's a family that runs a mortuary, but there's a lot of interesting ideas that like come up around like how like just recently in the past like 100 years we are like we don't want to look about at anything that involves death, like even like we used to have to like deal with the bodies, like we used to have to like bury bodies ourselves, like if a family member died we would like have a ritual and like bury the body, and now we don't ever like even only maybe one person see like, and then a lot of times there's the casket and they're like making them look like they're alive. We don't want to see the death, we don't want to see the decay, we look at them and they injected them with all these chemicals and put makeup on them to make them look like they're still the same, even though they're not. And so it's like just this interesting idea of like, we don't want to see it. We don't want to see the death. We don't want to see the decay. We don't want to see all of these like it's uncomfortable for a lot of people. And so I'm like, I wonder, like, would we be able to, not saying we need to like dive back into that extent, but I feel like there's a connection with us being kind of like disconnected from like being able to live fully because we don't really like see it and we're just like kind of disassociating from the idea
Well,
that it's there.
it's funny you talking about that, Liz, because I read a book about like burial practices and stuff a few years ago, and had
Just
that
that should
exact
be the promo just right there. I love that.
Was it a page turner?
It was, well, I was doing research for a project about a mortician, so it was like a mortician's.
Okay.
It was actually it was really good. It was like they became a mortician because they got a job like removing dead bodies, and they had just like these crazy stories of like going and picking up bodies in San Francisco, and most of the book was about that. It was entertaining, but then they kind of weaved in there like these like different death practices and how like we started pumping chemicals into bodies like mostly like around the Civil War because bodies were traveling far distances to be
Mm.
buried. But it is like we've become disconnected from death. And I think it's like for for a long time people were really used to seeing dead bodies, and we're not anymore.
So do you think that's also why people don't want to look old? Why
Yeah,
people
that's a good
see
question. Makes
people
sense.
in the United States specifically, maybe not in other countries, they don't even want to see old people. It's like,
Just took them away.
yeah, we don't want to deal
Put
with
them in the basement.
Yeah.
Put
It
them
does,
in
That's
home.
when Anna's sleeping. Put her in the basement.
it does just feel like we don't want to see it. Like we just want to like disassociate and not think about it. And I'm like, we probably need to look at that. That's probably a big thing we need to look at.
I mean, I think those are two different things. I for sure think we're ignoring death. I but I think that's a newer thing than ignoring
Aging.
aging people, because I don't know. I actually have a thing about people complaining about young people, like, oh, young people these days, they're doing weird things. They're looking at their phones too much, and to me that's just I think that's how it's always been. Like after you've lived for 50, 60 years, you just like
There's a generational gap that you're
yeah,
uncomfortable.
yeah, you don't understand it, and that's always going to happen, whether it's phones or
Yeah.
books or whatever technology or rock and roll, it's always going to be something.
Well, yeah. I mean, to wrap this up because we're at time. I think that it's a very good point, and I think there's a lot more to go into. And Heather said she'd love to have a whole conversation just about death and completion and all that sorts of stuff. I do think culturally, right, aging is
Taboo, yeah.
yeah, taboo, right? I mean, everything we're trying to do is like vitality, right? Like everybody's trying to extend life, extend comfort, and that's what I really think it is. Liz, to answer your question, is just this intolerance for discomfort, right? Like we don't want to be uncomfortable. We don't want to be comfortable in our skin. We don't want to be uncomfortable in settings, and we don't want to be uncomfortable in our lives. And so, like, I think a more quality of life is embracing discomfort, and I think that's part of presence, and being okay with it. And
We're
so,
so distracted.
yeah, and I think kind of my takeaway from this conversation, and probably for many people, is consciously and subconsciously we have opinions about aging or death, and they affect how we live our life.
To me, I would believe that it's like we're avoiding something because we're afraid of it, and right, we're afraid of death. So, but one of my favorite quotes is that fear does not prevent death, it prevents life,
Yeah.
which is
I,
what we're talking about,
I love that quote.
right? Until we confront our mortality, we'll never be able to live fully.
I think that's beautifully said, right? Confronting mortality. And I think that's kind of, the essence of what I've hopefully this conversation can sum up to be of, hey, what issues do you have with mortality? I mean, because I still have some, and right now, like aging may not be it for me, but of for people that are uncomfortable with how they look as they age, or I mean, and everybody's aging is different. I mean, everybody's going to get some sort of disease in some form of another, and it's all going to be different for everyone. And we have to be able to confront that uh, to be able to have a joyful existence. And catch you on the flippity flop.
Subscribe.
See
Thanks,
see some
Josh.
of you
Thanks,
soon.
everybody.
I
Love
mean,
you all.